The audience inside the Ed Sullivan Theater was buzzing with anticipation as Robert Reich, the outspoken former U.S. Secretary of Labor and political commentator, took his seat across from Stephen Colbert. Known for his sharp wit and progressive views, Reich was initially in good spirits, exchanging pleasantries and even poking fun at his own height, a self-deprecating bit he often uses to break the ice. But as the interview progressed, Colbert steered the conversation toward Reich's recent criticisms of both major political parties, pressing him on whether his rhetoric was contributing to increased polarization in the country. Reich responded, with characteristic passion, defending his statements as truth-telling in an era of spin, but the tension began to simmer as Colbert challenged him on specific examples and questioned whether his online presence sometimes crossed into what he called performative outrage. The crowd chuckled nervously. Sensing the shift from lighthearted banter to ideological sparring, the real turning point came when Colbert brought up a controversial social media post Reich had made earlier in the week, reading it aloud in full and asking if he stood by every word. Reich bristled, accusing the host of taking the comment out of context and framing it in bad faith. Colbert, staying in character but with a more serious edge, insisted that the quote was public and required no spin to be judged. The exchange grew sharper, with Reich pushing back and accusing mainstream media, including late-night comedy shows, of soft-pedaling the truth in favor of entertainment. When Colbert tried to pivot back to a lighter topic, Reich shook his head, removed his microphone, and stood up. "If we can't have an honest conversation without theatrics, then I'm done," he said, walking off stage to audible gasps from the audience. Colbert, ever the professional, turned the moment into an awkward joke before cutting to a commercial, but by the next morning, clips of the walk-off were trending across social media, sparking heated debate about whether Reich had been unfairly ambushed or simply unwilling to face tough questions. Backstage, the atmosphere was thick with a mix of shock and frantic energy as producers scrambled to manage the fallout. Robert Reich was pacing in the green room, his expression a cocktail of frustration and disbelief, while staff members politely offered him water and attempted to calm the situation. According to those present, he expressed that he had agreed to the interview under the assumption that it would focus on policy substance and economic reform, not become, as he put it, a spectacle designed to generate viral clips. Meanwhile, Stephen Colbert remained at his desk during the commercial break, huddling briefly with his head writer and producer, deciding how to address the incident when the show returned. By the time cameras were live again, Colbert addressed the walk-off only indirectly, making a quick quip about taking your mic and going home, before pivoting to the next guest. But online, the moment was already becoming a cultural flashpoint, with hashtags like hashtag Reich vs. Colbert and hashtag WalkOffGate spreading rapidly across X, TikTok, and YouTube, each platform fueling the debate over who had been in the right, as the clip of Robert Reich leaving mid-interview began circulating. Reactions were sharply divided along political and ideological lines. Supporters of Reich praised his refusal to participate in what they saw as a cheap-shot entertainment stunt, framing the incident as an act of standing up for intellectual integrity in an environment that often prioritizes laughs over substance. On the other hand, Colbert's fans argued that the host had simply been doing his job mixing humor with pointed questions, and that Reich had overreacted to a bit of comedic exaggeration. Media analysts quickly jumped in, noting how late-night talk shows have increasingly blurred the line between journalism and comedy, making such tensions inevitable. By the next morning, the walk-off had been dissected on cable news, podcasts, and opinion columns, each offering their own version of what really happened. Whether viewed as a principled stand or an unnecessary flare-up, the exchange had undeniably achieved one thing: it turned an otherwise routine TV segment into a viral media moment that neither man could easily ignore. In the days that followed, both Reich and Colbert addressed the incident in their own ways, though neither offered a full apology. Reich, in a detailed social media post, explained that he had agreed to appear on the show under the impression the conversation would focus on economic policy, only to feel blindsided by what he described as gotcha humor that trivialized serious issues. Colbert, meanwhile, used his next monologue to lightly poke fun at the walk-off, joking that he'd never had a guest leave before dessert was served, but also suggesting that passionate debates are part of the fun. The moment became a magnet for online discourse, with clips amassing millions of views and hashtags trending on multiple platforms. Interestingly, book sales for Reich's latest release spiked in the aftermath, while Colbert's ratings for that week's episodes saw a noticeable bump, underscoring how controversy can unexpectedly benefit both sides. In the end, what began as a tense on-air disagreement evolved into a cultural flashpoint, part political theater, part publicity storm that kept audiences debating long after the studio lights went dark. Behind the scenes accounts from production staff painted an even more complex picture of the night. Crew members claimed that tension had been simmering well before the cameras rolled, with Reich reportedly expressing concerns in the green room about the show's tone and comedic framing of policy issues. According to one stagehand, Colbert's producers had encouraged him to push Reich with sharp, satirical jabs, something that, while common for celebrity guests, was uncharted territory for the former labor secretary. When the conversation escalated, some staff members were caught off guard, scrambling to adjust camera angles and cut to commercial faster than planned. Others admitted they expected Reich to stick it out and were surprised when he stood, thanked the audience curtly, and exited. Afterward, security discreetly guided him to a private exit to avoid the paparazzi waiting outside. While official statements from both camps framed the moment as a spirited disagreement, those present described it as one of the most electric and uncomfortable tapings they'd ever witnessed, a reminder of how quickly live television can veer from comedy to confrontation without warning. In the hours after the incident, social media erupted with clips of Robert Reich leaving the stage, many slowed down and dissected frame by users eager to capture every subtle gesture and expression. Hashtags like #Reich vs Colbert, #WalkOffGate, and #LateNightDrama trended within minutes, sparking heated debates across political and entertainment circles. Supporters of Reich praised him for refusing to entertain what they saw as dismissive, entertainment-driven politics, while Colbert's fans argued that Reich had overreacted to the host's signature satirical style. Late-night pundits, podcast hosts, and even a few fellow politicians weighed in, some defending Reich's decision to walk, others suggesting it played directly into Colbert's comedic narrative. By the following morning, major news outlets were covering the confrontation as both a political and pop culture flashpoint, with op-eds questioning whether late-night TV had crossed a line in blurring the boundaries between serious policy discussion and humor. The clip's virality ensured the moment would live far beyond the broadcast, cementing it as one of the most memorable and polarizing exits in recent late-night history. Behind the scenes. Sources from the production hinted that tensions had been brewing well before the cameras rolled, with producers allegedly warning both men to keep the discussion light and comedic to match the tone of the show. Reich, however, reportedly made it clear that he wouldn't trivialize economic inequality for the sake of entertainment, a stance that clashed with Colbert's rapid-fire humor and occasional interruptions. The breaking point seemed to come when Colbert, in an attempt at a joke, reframed one of Reich's points in a way that Reich felt undermined the seriousness of his message. Those in the live studio audience described a sudden shift in the atmosphere, laughter giving way to awkward silence before Reich removed his microphone, gave Colbert a pointed look, and walked off without waiting for a commercial break. Crew members scrambled to cut to an impromptu skit while Colbert tried to smooth things over with a quip, but the unedited feed had already made its way to social media via audience members' phones. By the time the night ended, what began as a tense interview had transformed into a viral media storm, with the show's PR team reportedly working overnight to decide whether to address the walk-off in the next episode or let the headlines speak for themselves.